is awesome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Friday Night Roots. I'm your host, Justin Thomas. As always, do me a huge favor before we jump into it. Like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you can. I'd appreciate all the love I can get. As always, I try and build the stream around me. And as always, before we do it, let's talk some ball. Today's topic, three things I really want to talk about. I'm going to hit Matthew Stafford staying in LA, which happened late Friday. I'm going to hit what happened late Saturday. Deebo ended up getting traded to the Washington Commanders, and then I'm also, to kind of close us out, I'll touch on the Bengals franchise tagging T Higgins. So I'm super excited to kind of talk about all those topics. Let's just kind of jump right into it. Matthew Stafford stays in LA. Nothing too surprising there. Like I said in my previous video, we all kind of knew Matthew Stafford was gonna just end up probably staying in LA anyway. So I don't think that's one of those things I'm super surprised about. Obviously there was all this huge story that broke right before that happened that I almost made a video on, but I was like, nah, that doesn't matter at this point. But the huge story broke right before this all that happened, and then there were other analysts like posting these clips. Oh, Stafford to the Raiders, Stafford to the Raiders, Stafford to the Raiders. Well, turns out that was just all fugazi, and that just didn't end up working out. And then I know the Giants were also interested, but it turns out it was all just bullshit. I guess Tom Brady and him ended up vacationing together in the same place somewhere in Montana or Wyoming, ended up at the same country club, had some sort of informal meeting about him possibly joining the Las Vegas Raiders, but didn't matter. So either way, I what I do know now for the Giants is that they're expressing major interest in possibly having Aaron Rodgers as one of their replacements. So and not only that, Rams coach Sean McVay confirmed that the team's goal was to keep Stafford as the starting quarterback, balance short long term, trying to balance short and long term roster decisions. So either way, Stafford has 2 years left on his contract extension signed in March of 2022. Obviously, he only has $4 million guaranteed in 2025 with no guarantees in 2026. So that's a big deal, and that obviously plays a huge role. We all kind of knew that there was going to need to be an adjustment. I think they made one last season just before training camp. So obviously McVay is going to express massive pride for Stafford's performance in the playoffs. He wants, ever since he's been ever since he was traded from the Lions in 2021, he's led the team to a Super Bowl and a victory in his first season there. And then last season, he threw for 3,720 and 8 interceptions. Stafford's 191 yards shy of 60,000 career passing yards. I mean, I don't even need to talk about Stafford too much when it comes to the line items. He's incredible. Clearly Les Snead. Clearly the Rams saw something in Stafford when he was in Detroit, and ever since he's gotten there, he's done an excellent job. So kudos to the Rams organization and Sean McVay and kind of getting all that stuff worked out. Like I said, it's kind of something we saw coming, and something I don't think a lot of people, really expected him to walk away. Like it's both mutually beneficial to just keep him. I mean, basically if he left, you'd end up, probably on a mediocre team. And listen, let's be honest, like the Raiders, I just think at the end of the day, it wasn't a real possibility in Matthew Stafford's mind of even going to the Raiders. That makes Tom Brady 0 for 2. 0 for 2 on Ben Johnson, 0 for 2 on Stafford. I'm not saying Tom Brady won't, have a huge impact for the Raiders, but no. Stafford's incredible. Definitely, probably, in my opinion, probably the best quarterback in the NFC, barring maybe Jaden Daniels in his up-and-coming career. But right now, hands down, I give it to Matthew Stafford as the best QB in the NFC with, in terms of pure talent. I don't really have too much to say other than I'm not surprised. I mean, we all knew this was going to happen. He didn't want to leave. I know Stafford's family's there. His wife's got a podcast in LA. She's got some big people on her podcast. I just don't think it's one of those decisions that he ever really thought he was going to leave anyway. Him and his agent were probably, told that by the Rams just to try and kind of bring that number more close. And then, of course, at the end of the day, just offer the guy what he wants. I mean, he only wants to play another 1 or 2 years and let the Rams figure out their contingency plan in the meantime, the next 2 years. So a marriage we all saw coming. Not good for me as a 49ers fan, but I'm happy with the result. I think for football, that's the best result. I think Matthew Stafford keeps people watching the Rams games. I think he keeps them exciting. Let's not forget they were just one drive away from beating the Eagles in the snow and going to the Super Bowl. So and if Stafford left, that window probably would have closed at least for a few years or until they figured out who the next great thing is in LA. So happy for the Rams, happy for Stafford. And we'll see how he does. As he'll probably retire the next 2 or 3 seasons. So we'll kind of see how that unfolds. So let's jump into the next topic. Deebo traded to the Commanders. Initial reaction as a Niners fan, it sucks, but we all knew it was coming. They ended up trading him for a 5th-round draft pick. The key to this one, and what I thought made this trade a little more unique and a little more interesting, is that, he was only traded for a 5th pick, which I thought was maybe just a tad low in terms of comp for Deebo. But at the same time, they are going to be taking, both years of his salary, $17.55 million for 2025, which is a big deal. Also, another big deal is that now the Niners aren't on the hook for that post June 1st money that they would have owed him, because that's the start of the financial year for the NFL, right? So that they won't be on the hook for any of that. Either way, though, I know with how the NFL works, the deal can't be processed until March 12th anyway. Just that's the way the NFL rule is. Now, granted, something could change in the meantime, but it rarely happens. But don't get me wrong, it'll happen one day where some team, they come to these handshake agreements before the March 12th date, and the next thing you know, that person's on a different team, or they go back on a deal. It hasn't happened. Maybe it has, but not that I can recognize or can think of in recent years. But I think when they originally started this trade, I think Jonathan Allen was actually discussed, as part of the trade, but I don't think they ended up doing that, so it doesn't really matter. They also added, I just think for the Commanders side of things, it's a big deal. All-Pro wide receiver to help Jane Daniels, who obviously had a standout rookie season. Deebo Samuel throughout his career hasn't had the best career, but he's not really that kind of player. 4,700 receiving yards throughout his career, 1,100 rushing yards over 6 seasons. Obviously, he had a dominant year in 2021. That's what led to the extension with 1,700 scrimmage yards, 14 touchdowns, and basically carried us to the Super Bowl. It's exactly what happened. He requested a trade in 2021, ended up signing that $71 million extension. Ever since then, he's kind of been injured off and on. And I feel like the Commanders have struggled to find their number 2 at wide receiver, and maybe Deebo can be that guy with the creativity of Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously Deebo's known for yards after the catch, and will probably boost. If I was a betting man, will probably boost the Commanders' offense. Deebo's just a different kind of player. Deebo's a chess piece player, and I'm not to pull a Colin Cowherd term on you guys, but he really is. He's a utility. He's one of those players where I don't think he's meant to be on the field every play. I think he's a package player, meaning you have a heavily used package, obviously, like at least 25% of the game type package, you've got Deebo in there, or certain packages, you have Deebo in, certain packages you don't. Obviously, that's a huge deal in any sort of NFL football scenario, but I think Deebo's a package player. You put him in with certain groups of players that are on the field, and you utilize him to his strengths, and I feel like that's something that maybe the 49ers didn't do as much of, or maybe didn't. I think they used him. I just don't think the Niners need a utility player as badly as they needed just a pure route runner similar to Brandon Ayuk. So I think the reason they really had to sign Ayuk is because they needed a route runner, and Deebo's not a route runner. Deebo struggles in man-to-man coverage. But at the same time, who knows? Like I said, they have a route runner in Scary Terry. Maybe Deebo adds that number 2 that they're looking for. Obviously Adam Peters was the assistant GM of the San Francisco 49ers, who is now the GM of the Commanders. So that'll make a big difference, I think. I think that'll, he's the one who drafted him. He was there. Adam Peters was there when he got drafted. So Adam Peters knows Deebo well. He knows his strengths really well. He knows his faults or his negatives very well. So anyway, point is, Deebo's one of the best utility pieces in the league. I think the Commanders, if they use him properly, right? If they use him properly, Deebo can be a dangerous asset to the Commanders, especially if Jane Daniels continues on the path that he's going. Deebo's a solid runner, like I said, not a route runner, but and Deebo, I think there's one negative, really big negative to Deebo that the Commanders need to address. Deebo is extremely aggressive in a good way. Like, he plays the kind of football I love, that we all, I guess, love to watch. And I think that's why he's, though his stats may not be the greatest, I don't think they're supposed to be. I think he's one of those guys who you put in certain packages 25 to 50% of the time, and you go, this is plays meant for Deebo, right? He don't play him in man-to-man coverage. Don't play him having run deep yards down the street. Get him the ball on screens. Get him these jet sweeps. He's that mix between running back, wide receiver. Utilize his strengths to your strengths. And I get he's a little bit thicker of a quarterback and stuff, but either way he's a heavy hitter. He puts his head down and he runs downhill. So I'm super excited for the Commanders. I think the Commanders overall, I give the trade probably a, for both sides, I'd probably give it a C. It's right in the middle. It's nothing too great, nothing too splashy. Maybe a B. I don't like the 5th round comp. I think Deebo's maybe more of a 4th, but I do like the fact that the Commanders are taking his contract, and I think that'll ultimately lead to the 49ers being, or the Commanders, excuse me, being a little bit better. Commanders, we'll see what happens with that defense, but overall, happy for Deebo, happy for the Commanders, and as a Niners fan, we already knew it was coming. The Niners, our team's old, and they're going to want to continue to try and get new people in and younger talent, so kind of not surprised that's how it ended up. All right, let's jump into the last topic for today. T. Higgins franchise tag for the 2nd year in a row. This one came at a little bit of surprise, given the fact that their GM said the other day or last week at the Combine that, yeah, we're going to work on deals to get these guys both paid. Obviously, Jamar Chase is a huge rain cloud of what the hell's going to happen, but the GM said he'll obviously be the highest paid non-quarterback. We franchise tagged him, or we didn't. No, they didn't franchise tag him, but they let him play on that last year, and that was a fucking mistake because he ended up playing so well. They're like, shit, now we really got to make him the highest paid. So that's what you get for being cheap. Obviously, the Bengals are known as being a very cheap franchise to begin with, so I'm just not surprised. Higgins' announcement, obviously, he confirmed it on social media by posting tag, which is interesting. I bet he's probably pretty pissed off. Obviously the Bengals still aim to continue working on a long-term deal. Obviously with Higgins, I assume so. The details are that, Higgins 2025 franchise tenure would pay him $26.2 million if no long-term deal is reached by July 15th. 6 of the last 7 players, though, that were franchised in consecutive years, signed long-term deals that year. So who knows, maybe that kind of is a bright spot for him. And I think the Bengals, hopefully reach a deal with him and Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson. And just because, the Bengals are known for being cheap and the way their team's been playing, they need to pay players. And Joe Burrow's called out that front office and said, you guys need to pay people if you want to win. So given Higgins' stats, being drafted in 2020, he has more than 4,500 yards, 18th in the NFL for that, 34 touchdowns, which is 14th. He's dealt with some injuries in recent years, but still playing 12 games out of the last 2 years. He's had those soft tissue issues, but he's been playing fantastic. I think in 2024, despite the injuries, he still caught 10 touchdowns and ranked in, 10th in receiving yards per game. Higgins, sought a long-term contracting extension in 2023 and 2024 off seasons. Obviously, the 2024 one resulting in a franchise tag. Overall, I'm impartial with T. Higgins. Like, he's easily a WR1 on any other team. Maybe not any other. Some teams he's obviously a WR2 with Jamar Chase, but there are a lot of teams out there that need WR1. And I almost feel like the Bengals are puppy guarding him just to tell him no later on, and that sucks. I feel bad for T. Higgins in this situation, and I'm going to stand by that opinion. I think he's too good to be sitting. I think he's just too good to be sitting in Jamar Chase's shadow. If I'm T. Higgins, get out of there. Obviously he doesn't have a choice. These NFL teams have the power, and it seems the Cincinnati Bengals are, using their power to be cheap on T. Higgins, and that's honestly driving me fucking crazy. Like, if I'm Joe Burrow, that's driving me crazy seeing the news. If I'm Jamar Chase, that's like, come on, guys, just pay the guy. Like, if you want to win, you got to pay him. And it almost feels like the Bengals are holding him back. So a little surprised by this move. Very surprised by this move. I don't know. I think T Higgins on a lot of other teams is a standout top echelon receiver. Then they're just not able to bring him back. I mean, remember when the Bengals had Jamar Chase, T Higgins, and Boyd? I mean, they were like they went to the Super Bowl. Like this team's legit. Their defense was way better. But then over the course of the next couple of years, they just let all their players walk away. It was such a stupid and silly situation for them. But the stat I brought up, 6 out of the last 7 franchise, you know, players that were consecutively tagged. They did sign long-term deals with that team, so who knows? Maybe that's just the Bengals holding on to him for just another few weeks until they can get that deal done. That's what I'm hoping for Higgins. That's what I'm hoping for the Bengals. But if I'm T Higgins, the moment you get an opportunity to leave, and if that they don't do you right, man, get out of there. T Higgins needs to get out of there. So anyway, that kind of covers it for my 3 main topics. I'll cover like a few little things. Other NFL news today. Jimmy Johnson retired from TV from Fox, which is pretty surprising, right? After 31 years on TV, 2 Super Bowls and a natty as a head coach. Love that guy. Sad to see him go, but he's had an amazing career, an amazing coaching career. Those 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys and then that natty, and he's been on Fox now for 31 years. So no, Jimmy Johnson deserves it. Well earned. Go enjoy retirement. Hopefully he gets to finally sit back and watch football all day on Sundays and live out his days. So excited for him. Congratulations, Jimmy. And then let's see. Darius Slay released from the Eagles. That's crazy. 6-time Pro Bowler. That's crazy. I mean, how the hell does that happen? I mean, I'm not that surprised. Howie Roseman's a great GM, so I'm going to put my trust in Howie Roseman in this decision. Basically he said, you got to get a little younger, and sometimes that means cutting players you don't want to. So they cut him. I'm a little surprised by that. I bet Darius Slay feels a little animosity, but he'll find a team probably. He still wants to play one more year, he says. Now given that, he may be a little harder to find a team, but someone will pay him for a year, right? And then now, given that Matthew Stafford's off the table, the Raiders are looking at Russ, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold. Now, this is a conversation that I'm sure will happen deeper and more in depth in a future video, but put a pin in that. Don't know how I feel about it. And of course, the Giants are also pursuing Rodgers, as well as I assume are showing interest in the other ones as well. So it'll be interesting to say, but that's kind of it for today. If you guys have anything to add or anything I missed, you dislike, disagree with opinion, throw it in the comments for me. I'd really appreciate that, guys. And as always, let's talk some ball. Love you.